already know what I'm going to talk about, and it's a really exciting subject for me. I've had 3 marriages, so I've had lots of experience. I'm not going to talk about those. I used 2 books, and I'm doing this because it's still February, the month of love. Hugh and Gail Prather, I Will Never Leave You. Very important book. It's about the how of relationships, of couples. How to create it, how to keep it going. And Conversations with God, book 1, Neil Donald Walsh, talks a lot about relationships in general. And both fabulous books. And this morning I was getting ready and I found on YouTube, what was it called? Use laughter, or make laughter a part of, use laughter to have a better marriage. And this guy, Mark, no, I won't. I can't, did I write it down? Mark Gonger. He's in Wisconsin. He's a minister. He's a workshop leader. He takes this workshop, Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage, all over the place. And it was so funny. It was so funny. But my talk, serious. So he brought a Bible verse. It is good for a man not to marry. If he does, there shall be trouble in his life. I don't know where he found that in the Bible, but I thought it was pretty funny. He talked about the differences between a woman's mind and a man's mind, and how men kind of organize their lives into areas and boxes that never touch each other. And women interconnect everything. Everything in their minds are interconnected with everything else. And so his workshops are about how people can learn to understand each other very simply and create a better marriage by laughing at all the differences. So we know that the purpose of relationships is spiritual growth. And that happens in so many different ways. And our first relationship is to God, of course. But even that relationship can get very complicated. But that relationship is simple compared to the complicated relationships that we have with business partners and romantic partners and our friends, even animals and plants. We eat them. I mean, and that's a whole different, that opens up a whole different kind of. I'm thinking to myself, should I be eating these creatures that I love? Yep. Yes. And then there's our relationships to our own bodies. And so in our soul, Neil Donald Walsh reminds us, we already know everything. But in order to experience everything, we come into these earth suits and we get creative. And that creativeness is born in relationship to everything and to each other. We can't live without relationships. Hugh Prather talks about relationships are for healing. We go about the world as individuals and as communities and countries in contrast, and I might use the word at war with every other, not just individual, but every other country and every other community. It's amazing. I mean, but we keep doing this as if experience once isn't enough. We need to repeat things. We need to repeat things. So you pray there, and Gail had a church in Santa Fe, New Mexico that Larry and I were part of. And what they used was the Course in Miracles. And this was called the Course in Miracles Church. It really was. And it was called the Dispensable Church because after a few years, he had to dispense with it. But he was a wonderful speaker, and you just go to YouTube and search for Hugh Prather, and there he is. So he talks about in working with people, they worked with couples in relationship for many years, and talked about some things to do, and about relationships in general. Don't demand that the other person change. You might not, it's not going to serve you to ask the other person to change. So what you have a choice to do is to change your attitude. And I've done that a lot of times, and it's a powerful tool. But you have to go to Spirit to find a way. You have to use Spirit. You can ask yourself, would I rather be right or would I rather be happy? And often this comes up in the Course in Miracles, because we frequently choose to be right. That's why we are at war with each other. We just make that choice because we've got these wonderful part of ourselves called the ego that knows it's right and won't take any other answer. I'm right. Well, yes, you're right at a point, but we have to go further. We have to go into the subconscious that Rod was talking about. So when you simply cannot stand how you feel in a relationship, you have to make a change. You have to change. And Hugh and Gail were interested in helping people work on their relationships and play and explore and experience. Because when you have a relationship, and it's an important relationship, it usually began for the right reasons. So it's worth, and somebody's shaking their head. Not always, right? Not always. But they did work with people, and they were very successful. So it's important to remember that when your ego wants out, your ego will fill your mind with fear, and it thinks the only solution is to get out. But that's not the only solution. A lot of good can be maintained and changed, found, created, and recreated. Relationships are a mirror of our thoughts. So when we're looking to improve a relationship, we need to look into our own thoughts. And one thing we do is have very high expectations of relationships. And that makes everything we do in a relationship that much more dramatic. And we're here, our purpose is to experience. So we're going to want to experience. So we're going to make drama. We are. The ego wants drama. It lives on drama. It survives. It thrives on drama. Hugh and Gail have written in this book, the best thing you can do for your relationship is to maintain your spiritual practice. And Neil Donald Walsh again and again says, take care of yourself. You are the most important person in your relationship. And of course he's right. Focus on what you need to do for yourself. And it will work out. Focus on spirit. So you often get to a place where how much can you take in? How much can your heart hold? Hugh it was in the 70s when Hugh and Gail got married, and that was a time of open relationships, and Hugh thought it was really great to have affairs. And ordinarily, these days, a person would leave a relationship when one of them was having affairs. But she didn't leave. It took years for him to realize how destructive that was. But she did not leave. She had faith that he would return, and in fact he did. But it took years. And it was painful. It was painful. So our relationships can be painful. And she decided to focus on what was healing, the process of healing. And she decided to focus on what united them, which was their children, and not what separated them. And she really kept them together, and he really, after he came to his senses, he really totally appreciated what she had done. They speak of a relationship as a third reality that holds both people. He speaks of them as independent of our bodies and independent of our egos. That third reality of a relationship. And I think that's a good idea. Okay. So we take each relationship to its spiritual core. We look for that core that is within us that is pure, immobile, not able to be at war with anything, that spirit self. And we develop that. And we recognize that each relationship carries within it the seeds of what we need to learn. And the oneness that we feel about each other is not about what that person is doing, but it's about who that person is being and what each of us in a relationship is being in our hearts. Neil Donald Walsh talks about that. here when we do the namaste, we look at each other in the eyes. And sometimes we really do that. We're really paying attention. And sometimes we don't do it. We don't pay attention. But if we pay attention, I had a friend when I was going to massage school. We were sharing a house together. I had met him in Boston when I was going to college, and then I met him again in Santa Fe. He just happened to be there, and you know how you feel that relationships, you're drawn together. It's not all you're doing. You are drawn together. There is a force in the universe that brings you, and this was one of those relationships. What was his name? Richard Murray. And he had a restaurant in Santa Fe. We were both going to Boston University together, and we were friends there. And then we became friends in Santa Fe and shared a house. And we had an exercise. We would sit in front of a mirror and look at each other and look at ourselves in the mirror. And another way you can do this is just sit opposite a person and look in their eyes. And amazing things happen. You have to feel it to get it. But it's a very powerful tool. And my husband and I have done that. And it takes you to the core. It takes you to your core. So in that spiritual space, in relationships, we remember our innocence. We remember the innocence of others. And that's the place you get to when you're doing the mirror exercise. And we see how each of us wants the same thing in relationship. We want to love. We want to be loved. And this is true if you're in the grocery store talking to somebody. We all want that same acknowledgement, that same appreciation. So we must have a vision. I like the idea of visioning for our center, but we need to vision for our lives as well. We need to find time to be in the silence and to find a relationship sense, what we want to give. Because we're here to give. The purpose of a relationship is to find out what it is we can give, not necessarily what we can get. But of course, we already know that giving is receiving. Bless every relationship. Because it has the possibility of taking you places you've never been before. I was just going to look and see if I could find that. Where did I leave that? No matter what it looks like or feels like in the present, you can learn to use it in a way to show up that inspires your courage, your humor, especially, and your intelligence, and your love. I'm just going to read from the back of Neil Donald Walsh's book. Go ahead now, ask me anything. I will contrive to bring you the answer. The whole universe I will do this. You may ask a question, watch, listen. The words to the next song you hear, the information in the next article you read, the storyline of the next movie you watch, and the chance utterance of the next person you meet, the whisper of the next river, the next ocean, the next breeze that caresses your face. All these devices are mine. All these avenues are open to me. I will speak to you if you will listen. I will come to you if you invite me. I will show you that I have been there always. Always. Now it's your turn. Open mic time.